Yo, thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Let's do it. Over the years, I've tried a lot of different training splits, from the biceps and chest rotation back in the day, that was a classic, to the traditional body part split, training one muscle group per session, to a push-pull leg split, and then even to an upper-lower split. And to say that I've seen better progress specifically from one kind of split over another wouldn't really be fair, because my life has been pretty random, so we're not exactly testing this in laboratory conditions. My training philosophy now is centered more around enjoyment than just all-out results. I try to do the fundamentals well, and then for all of those choices that probably don't make too much difference, I will just go with what I think I'll enjoy most, rather than trying to find the absolute most optimal method of going about things in every single scenario. So it was this desire to enjoy my training that initially led me to the idea of following some kind of full body training split. Occasionally I give myself these free training days where I get to go into the gym with completely no agenda, and I can just choose whatever random array of exercises that take my fancy. And I found that I was really enjoying these workouts, mainly because when switching from one muscle group to a completely different one, you carry next to no fatigue from that exercise to the next. And I found as a result of that, I felt like I was getting a lot more out of each individual exercise. And that is what initially put this idea into my head. Provided you do adequate weekly volume, does it really matter how that's distributed? So basically, if you would usually do, say, 20 sets of chest on a Monday, is it just as good, or even better perhaps, to do those 20 sets split over 4 days, for example? So that just remained a nice idea for a while really, and it wasn't until a little bit later that I came across a video that Jeff Nipper did on the topic with Eric Helms. I will link that video down below, so shout out to Jeff for the inspiration. Anyway, cut a long story short, I thought about doing it for a while, decided fuck it, let's give it a try. So this is my full body training routine. So just a couple of quick points I want to mention about the program before we get into it. Number one, I've given myself 5 training days. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to train 5 times a week, and that's something I'll come on to later. But I chose 5 because I think it gives you a good degree of flexibility when spreading your volume across the week. So what I mean by that is, if you wanted to, you could choose to train a body part in, say, 4 of every 5 training sessions. So the equivalent of 80% of your training sessions, you might hit chest. Now let's say you only had 3 training days, you would have to choose between hitting chest either 33, 66 or 100% of the time, and so you can see that with fewer sessions you have less flexibility to fine tune your volume. Number 2, lifts are ordered and grouped to try and reduce any crossover fatigue. So whereas it might have been a difficult choice between putting your bench press or your overhead press first in a typical push workout, with these full body workouts you would try and keep movements like that in separate workouts, and that'll become clearer in a second when we take a look at the actual sessions. Number 3, the volume per muscle group per workout is inevitably going to be quite low, probably less than you are typically used to, and that is because it needs to be a recoverable amount with the training frequency being so high. In other words, if you're going to be hitting chest in some capacity on Tuesday, you can't really smash it to bits on Monday, to use technical terms. And finally, just a quick disclaimer. I put this together for myself, so it is according to my own preferences and priorities. So with that in mind, it's not necessarily going to be balanced in terms of the emphasis placed on each individual muscle group. Okay, let's get into the workouts anyway. So we've got 3 blocks, and firstly I'm just going to show you block A, day 1, and talk you through some of my exercise selections so that you can get an idea of a typical workout, and then I'll show you the whole program in a bit more detail. So I'm starting with leg press. You'll see shortly that I'm not going to be squatting at all during this program, and that is a decision just based on my previous experience with squatting and how it impacts the rest of my training. Also, the leg press in my gym is absolutely epic, so I do want to make the most out of having that available to me. Next up, I'm moving on to flat bench, and really these exercises could have been either way around, and I don't think they really would impact each other at all. I find that going from leg press to bench press, I can still bench just as if it's my first exercise. Calf raises next, and I'll be doing these on the Smith machine. I put those in the middle of the workout because it's really what I enjoy least, so I'm basically feeding myself a shit sandwich. This way I can also finish the workout with upper body exercises, which means that I'll enjoy viewing my pump more post-workout, and these are the real considerations you gotta make when your vanity has no bounds. A chest supported row is up next, and I actually have two variations of this machine available to me in my gym, and I enjoy both, so I might alternate between the two. This isn't a priority exercise for me, so I'm going to allow myself a little leeway with that one. And I'm sticking with chest supported rows for this first block of training because I want to be careful about hammering my lower back too much. Lateral raises are next. Again, I have a very sick lateral raise machine in my gym, so I'll be making use of that. And finally finishing with some tricep cable extensions to finish off. So obviously, as is pretty customary, keeping isolations to the back end of the workout. So this is a pretty high volume workout coming in at 22 sets, and I think that's about as high as the workouts are going to get. But since you're carrying less fatigue across from one exercise to the next, you're going to have fewer of those wasted sets, which are sometimes those sets that you experience towards the end of your workout when you just feel that they aren't really doing much, and they probably aren't. So to quickly break down the muscles covered in this workout, we've got glutes, hams and quads in exercise 1, chest, triceps and anterior delts in exercise 2, calves in exercise 3, traps, rhomboids, lats, biceps and posterior delts in exercise 4, lateral or mid delt in exercise 5, and triceps in exercise 6. So of course, some muscle groups there are working as synergists rather than as prime movers, but those will be hit more directly in other workouts. For example, although there is some significant lat contraction with my machine row exercise, it's not going to be as great as it would be in pull-ups, which will be in the following workout. So what I want you to take away from this is that when we say a full body workout, we don't mean hitting every single muscle as a prime mover. We just mean that most muscle groups are involved at least partially in some of the movements. Let's take a look at the actual program as a whole anyway. Okay, so this is what we've got. At the bottom here we have 7 tabs. Firstly, we have notation, and this is just some syntax to help you understand the program a bit better. And then we have block A, block B and block C. I also put these extra tabs in between that highlight in red the differences between each block. Most things are staying the same, so I've just put those in there simply to show what's changed. Finally, there's just a tab at the end showing the volume for each muscle group in block A, and I just wanted to include in this because when you're looking at it, it's not as easily discernible when all your volume is spread over the full week like this. So let's go to block A. I'm reading this like a book, so left to right and top to bottom. So I'm starting with leg press for 4 sets of 10, and you can see on my final set there I'm aiming for 10 reps with 1 left in the tank, so that means I should be roughly using a weight that I could get 11 reps out with if I really tried. One thing I would say is don't get too hung up on these RIR or reps in reserve numbers. Same goes for if you are following a program that uses RPEs. They're just to ensure that each set is an appropriate difficulty, but if you've been lifting a while, you might already have a good grasp on gauging that for yourself. Although I might be hitting the same muscle group in some capacity on consecutive days, you'll see that I'm often alternating between a more and a less taxing movement. So if I have shoulder press on one day, I will just have a lateral raise on the following day, and the same applies for chest, so it's not like I'm actually bench pressing every day. Let's move to block B. So a lot of this has stayed the same, but some of the rep ranges have decreased a little, and there is 1 or 2 exercise changes just because I wanted to include some that I couldn't fit into the first block. There's a slight increase in intensity and a decrease in reps as we go through each block, but as I'm covering different rep ranges within each week anyway, there isn't too much need for major change to rep ranges. I'm going to spend 2 weeks in each block before going back to the start, when I might change up some exercises that I'm more flexible with before running through it again. If you're not planning on training 5 times a week, you could just assign a certain number of iterations to each block. So you could just say that you're going to go through each block, say twice, before moving on to the next, regardless of how long that takes you. So if you want to take a closer look at that program, you can download it via the link in the description of this video. If you want to thank me for being a sound lad and providing free shit, you can also be a sound lad / girl in return and like my video, or you can be a psychopath and not like it, or you can be a true psychopath and dislike it. That'd be crazy, but it is an option. Anyway, what else did I want to say? So I will also be doing some cardio alongside this program, and another thing I'm focusing on this year is trying to get more flexible, but for the sake of keeping things on topic, I will put those in separate videos. So I think that's it. Thanks for tuning in. One last thing before we go. It wouldn't be a Joey D video without a Squarespace ad. Yes, yes. Thanks again to Squarespace for their continued support on this channel, and if you're new here or you're a terrible person and you never watch my videos to the very end, Squarespace are the platform that I've been using recently to create a new website for my online personal training business. They are the place to go for all of your website needs, whether it's anything from a blog, a portfolio, right the way up to an online store. They have the template designs for every kind of site you can imagine, and you can further edit those templates to make your site fully unique. If you happen to be a personal trainer or a barber or anything that requires seeing people at set times, you can use their appointment scheduling feature so clients can book in straight on your site. And there are also SEO tools so you can make sure your site gets ranked higher in search engines, and if that ain't enough, you can use email campaigns to reach your audience with targeted messages. So if you are thinking about setting up a website, head to squarespace.com and start your free trial. And then when you're ready to take the leap, go to squarespace.com/Joe Delaney for 10% off your first order. Ciao, ciao. Sayonara.
Joe Delaney is my hero.